The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Andrew Hermiz, and you're listening to The Secrets of WandaVision, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this Marvel streaming series on Disney+. Joining me today on the panel are Father Andrew Kinstetter. Hi, Father.
Hello, hello.
Hello. And Mike Denz.
Great to be here.
Great to have you. Before we start, please help us out by writing a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from, and sharing the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community of listeners. So, WandaVision, a Disney Plus streaming service, part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first of its kind on Disney Plus. This is sort of their entry into a sort of serialized TV series on a streaming platform. I mean, they've had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. On ABC, but that was more of a network show.
Was that actually canonically connected to the movies? I know that there was some separation between those in the movies, whereas WandaVision is very clearly leading into movies.
Right. Yeah. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is canon.
Okay.
And
they did at times. Yeah. I remember when the different Avenger movies were coming out and they were going, they did like was it Age of Ultron that was going on during one of those seasons?
Age of Ultron. There was also Civil War and I think it started with Winter Soldier. And yeah, they wouldn't, I mean, that show didn't have like the biggest cameos, but they would always.
No, they had Sif come one time, and
right, yeah,
that was about it.
Yeah, I think Nick Fury showed up like for a second. I didn't watch every episode of that series, but yeah, I know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was more kind of its own thing, and then the events of the movies would have some sort of effect on the storyline.
Then there was Agent Carter's short-lived series,
right? Yeah,
for a couple seasons, I think they got.
Yeah, another network show. But yeah, this is the first Disney Plus streaming series. And obviously there was a lot of chatter on social media about it before and during and after. That's kind of the nature of having a serialized show. You kind of get to do that. A big theme of this show, and we'll get into it, is Father, you pointed this out while we're planning this, that we're recording this during Holy Week. So today we're right smack dab in the middle of Holy Week, and as we prepare for Christ's passion and his death on the cross, so a theme of grief, which this show deals heavily with, is something that we're sort of meditating on and recollecting during this time. And again, like I said, we'll get to that. But first, I just want to get your general thoughts on the show. What did you think of it? Were you happy? Were you disappointed? Somewhere in the middle? Father, we'll start with you.
So I need to take a step back for a moment and at least lay the groundwork here. I am a casual fan, I would say, of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So like, I don't know the comics other than like, I know that they appeared in comics, but I've never read them. So I went into this show not knowing that there was a whole story already played out in the comics. Mm-hmm. So, and Wanda and Vision weren't necessarily my top favorites in the movies. So kudos to their marketing team, because I was really fascinated by this show. And so much so that I of course watched it, and I'm on this podcast talking about it, and I absolutely loved it. So I think that, I being a casual fan, totally wasn't looking at Agnes like, oh, maybe she's Agatha, right. And so I have friends who are like, oh, we're already watching her, like, you should watch her. And so I was like, oh, okay, so let's watch her character. Or like Geraldine's character, when it's revealed that she's Monica Rambeau, I also had to have someone point out, like, you watched Captain Marvel, right? I was like, oh, okay. But even so, like, even though I didn't actually know those sorts of connections, I absolutely loved this show. And I loved the themes that they dealt with, grief. I loved the sitcom eras. I mean, I feel like Wanda, like that's nostalgic for me too. So like I watched Bewitched when I was a kid, loved it, you know, and those sorts of things. I thought it was just brilliantly done how they modified all of these together. And if you watch, there's the Disney Plus documentary on WandaVision, how they did it. That first episode, you know, the Dick Van Dyke episode, they actually filmed in front of a live studio audience.
Yes.
So like that's all of these sorts of things that they did to make these fit the different eras is just phenomenal. An awesome way to film. And I mean, they did a brilliant job with it. It felt real. And the themes that they dealt with, of course, were real and not just kind of made fun of or made light of. And that's not something that you often see in a show like this. So long story short, casual fan, loved it. Didn't know the comic backstory, but still loved it anyway.
Yeah, it's good to have that perspective on the show, because a majority of the people that are watching it are just casual fans, not really knowing what the comic books, how the storylines end up in that sort of.
In fact, it's really funny because I have a buddy that I watched it with. And so he would like explain things to me after every episode. And he's like, oh, this is totally, Agatha and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny because I did the same thing with him for The Mandalorian. So like,
there you go.
we have this awesome, TV show watching relationship. So
perfect. Yeah. Well, and the great thing about the MCU is that they don't really take comic book storylines and adapt them literally. They pick and choose here and there, and ultimately they kind of do their own thing. So it was cool seeing, as a comic book fan myself, seeing like the influences that it took from some of them from my favorite comic books. I mean, there's a Vision comic by Tom King that's one of my all-time favorite comic book runs, and it really has nothing in common with the show other than it's set in like suburbia, and it's Vision trying to have a family. In that story, Vision is the one that creates his wife. It's basically he creates a whole synthezoid family. So that aspect of it kind of switched around, and being in like white suburbia is kind of like the only sort of commonalities it has. But it was cool seeing those influences. Mike, what did you think?
Overall, I really enjoyed it. I was really impressed. I'm like, basically, Marvel MCU hit it out of the park again. I haven't been disappointed in any of their movies. I saw what it was really actually much more of a revelation, the way Mandalorian kind of brought Star Wars out of a lot of problems that a lot of fans thought that it was created by first the prequels and then the Disney's movies outside of maybe Rogue One and Solo, which I like, but they really did a great job with Mandalorian, and you're like, how is Marvel going to follow this up with what Disney did? And I loved it. I love Elizabeth Olsen. She got all the acting talent. Her twin sisters.
Yes.
I don't think so. I didn't even realize for a long time who she was, because even though she has the same last name and looks like them, she's just really talented actress and beautiful. And so she just really hit it out of the park. And then there was Paul. I love him too. I took my wife and daughter to a Comic-Con in Seattle in 2018 in the spring, and they were both there, Olsen and Bettany. Cool. And it was a lot of fun to see them kind of like talking. And this was like way before I even had any idea that there was a WandaVision. This is actually pre Endgame. So it was kind of neat to then see them do this together. And I really liked, as you look back, how you had the campy kind of, Dick Van Dyke beginning, which everything was just goofy. And then you get into like Bewitched in the 60s, and you get into like maybe a Sesame Street kind of 70s. And as you get more into the later decades, and I'm 50, so I'm enjoying all this. This is either stuff I watched as reruns when I was a kid or stuff I grew up with. And everything gets more serious. Every decade is a little more serious. Even though they had the really cool like 80s sets and the subtleties of the 90s, like, what is it? Something House. I can't remember.
Full House.
Full House. Thank you.
Right.
Full House kind of look and all that kind of stuff. But it got more serious, and there was more of those kind of like eerie interruptions of, breaking the fourth wall, kind of like, the one time when Agatha like said, "Oh, should I do that again?"
Yeah.
Like she was like, and then you realize she was actually pretending to pretend. It was pretty surreal. So I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed how they revealed everything. I loved Darcy's comic relief. She's my daughter's and mine, one of our favorite characters. It was really kind of cool to see her come back, and just be Darcy. So yeah, I overall I really enjoyed the whole thing.
The names of the episodes too, I would just point out, were also like totally appropriate for like each of those.
Oh yeah,
so like they did the whole thing just with that in mind, which was really cool.
They did their homework. They were really looking at how are these things introduced. Yeah. The commercials were hilarious. Every little thing.
The episode where the reruns where they go back through Wanda's life, like it all just it all just speaks that TV show language, which was brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, their house was literally, you only saw the one side. I mean, it was like it was a stage,
like a set,
even though they're supposed to be really living in the house.
Yep.
You never saw the one side of the house.
And the finale episode was literally titled the season finale.
Yes.
Like just so good.
Yeah, I'll echo everything you guys said. I mean, I thought the show was brilliant. I had high expectations for it, and I think it exceeded them. Again, I think the format, they use it brilliantly, and the fact that they were able to, because like the first I think it wasn't until episode 3, at the end of episode 3, where we really got like some moving of the story.
That's when they first went behind the scenes into the real world, right? Episode 3? Okay.
Yeah. It was really, so those first 3 episodes, you're like, okay, what am I watching? And really those like subtle like hints of like something weird's going on, like the one time where Wanda, edited the show.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like Vision was like starting to like realize what's going on, and then she cut it, and then like stuff like that, like the Agatha thing that you mentioned. Should I do it again? Stuff like that. Like those little things were so intriguing that when the credits came up, you're like, oh my goodness, like this cannot be it. Like, do I have to wait a week?
Right.
It's and being in this Netflix streaming service sort of thing where a lot of shows they'll just dump all the episodes at once and you can binge it. What Disney Plus has been doing, like they've been doing with Mandalorian and I think every one of their series so far, is putting them out weekly. So the conversation, the social sort of interaction can happen throughout the week. It takes you back to the days to where you actually had to wait a week for watching TV shows. So that kind of segues to what I wanted to talk about. Again, this being Disney Plus's first streaming series for the MCU, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is playing right now, and I'm sure we'll cover that on a podcast. But just overall, I know we already touched on it a bit, but what do you think of having a serialized format like this? The MCU basically having only movies being their sort of successful and big box office sort of thing, now moving into Disney Plus and doing they've planned out their future. I mean, they're doing a bunch of these that's interweaving with all the different movies. I mean, this show is going to tie directly into Doctor Strange 2. So just overall, what did you think of this format and the kind of like the future of Marvel going forward utilizing this?
So I think it's great. I guess I have to be careful what I say. I have been guilty of binge watching shows before. But
yes,
but
you're in the same company. Don't worry.
There is something just appropriate about forcing everybody to wait a week. you know, you've got that week of speculation. You gather with your buddies and say, well, did you watch WandaVision yet? Or, you know, or what did you think? And, you know, what do you think is going to happen? Rather than just having like, well, one and done kind of, you know, one day, watch it all and then, you know, the mystery solved. I love the long game that they're playing. You know, this kind of a story they tell over 8 weeks is what they took with WandaVision. And it allows them to really slow down and really let the characters breathe and process. And like for Wanda, that was crucial in this particular show. And so like you can't just dump that all at once. You know, it actually sort of, the grief process echoes the fact that you have to take your time and go, you know, week to week. You know, so I think I think that's going to complement the movies very, very well. The movies are great. 2 hours, you've got a complete package story. But I also really like the slow narratives of a show like this, and they're not really that slow. I mean, it's only 9 episodes, so it's you know, a lot of the superhero shows that I watch are like 22 episodes long, and that's, you know, start in the fall and then you end in May. Right. Or with COVID, it's like a 2-year wait before, you know, the season finale, you know, but I really like that because it gives me something to look forward to. It's not just, you know, you don't just kind of complete it all in one sitting. And that allows for that social media, that chatter, that speculation. And that I think is part of the fun. And I would point out, you mentioned Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I also am watching that, of course. And to be honest, I am not enjoying it as much at all as I did with WandaVision. I'm enjoying it, so I'm going to watch through it. But I had to. I was talking with my buddy about it, and I was like, it's not resonating with me in the same way. And he pointed out, and I thought this was really insightful, that he pointed out that maybe what I like about WandaVision is I like the mystery. They're like Falcon and the Winter Soldier is more action oriented, which is great. Right. But WandaVision, there was like this mystery that you're trying to figure out what's going on. And I personally love that kind of a story where I'm like trying to figure out who's behind it, who's the villain, who's doing what. And with WandaVision, like you're guessing all the way. Well, I think I had a different villain labeled just about every episode, because you don't know what's going on. Whereas Falcon and the Winter Soldier is more straightforward. So I think that this worked for WandaVision very well.
WandaVision even had that like M. Night Shyamalan, like, or however you say his name, like, let's look back and see what Agatha did, you know, how she was manipulating things all throughout, you know, and we had that flashback moment where, oh, that's why that happened, or that's how, you know, through her eyes. And
the Munsters theme song kind of
so great. I mean, it was number 1 on iTunes.
I'm
right
guilty
as soon
of
as that
helping
song
that
came out.
happen too.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys? I tried to get my daughter to, because she's the one I watched this with, and the end credit music, which we would listen to, so reminded me of the original Incredible Hulk music. Did you no, yes, not. Do you remember like the very first one?
Yeah, I didn't make that connection.
But, no, all right. It must be me. I mean, when I played it for her, she's like, okay, I can see what you're saying. But I just wanted to know if in the comments, if anybody like, yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, let us know.
I'm a theme music kind of geek. But anyway, the WandaVision, because of the episodes and because of the way it's broken up, you couldn't imagine that being a movie. You could, I mean, it would be a long movie, but it was still, you could, like a 3.5 hour movie. It would be weird with those television. It's made for television. It's made for episodes. Yes. It's made to be a serial. Where I can imagine Falcon and the Winter Soldier with the quality of what they're doing. I could see that being a movie, that they would make that like a movie with the same kind of, it wouldn't be these weird choppy breaks every 25 minutes. It would flow, I think, rather well.
They've basically described Falcon and Winter Soldier that way, that it's like they made it like one long movie that they're breaking up. So, but like WandaVision obviously is not that.
No. I mean, like, you can't keep, it would be weird watching a movie and suddenly you have the credits for, like, and starring, Wanda, I mean, it would just be obviously weird. So it works much better. And you like the making him wait. You like I had to wait like 3 years to see what happened to Luke after Hahn was frozen and, the whole thing. And you people just watched it all at once. Now, at least they have to wait a week. It's like, the me now, right now culture of kids watching this is like, what do I have to do? Wait a whole week? Yes, you do. It's, revenge. But yeah, I liked it. And you're right, Father. There was really much more of a mystery, like, my daughter and I guessing. And like she's almost 21. So, she's been, I introduced her to the MCU unknowingly just by renting Thor: The Dark World one year, like 6 or 7 years ago. And that exploded into her passion. And so we watch them all together. We go to see them all together. And we enjoyed kind of trying to figure out like who was what and what was going on and what were they up to with WandaVision. Obviously, Winter Soldier, it's not as much of a mystery. It's just kind of fun to see what's happening and watch those characters. And Mackie and Bucky, what's the actor's
Sebastian
name?
Stan.
Yeah, Sebastian Stan. They were at the Comic-Con too. So this is like, yay, another pair of guys that I got. My daughter actually met Mackie. She got to take Sebastian Stan. Yeah, she took a picture with him, and she got a picture with her idol Tom Hiddleston at that.
Dang,
too.
Nice. Yeah, I've I'll brag. I've been to many San Diego Comic Cons, and I've seen like anyone and everyone. So
yeah, those are the holy grails of the Comic Cons.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've met Tom Holland and Paul Rudd.
Very cool.
I feel like I need to throw out
I've been in the same room with them. I haven't met them though.
I have pictures with both of them, which
that's awesome. They were cool. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I agree with what you guys have said. Yeah. I mean, just the mere fact, the first episode with a live audience and doing the whole, parodying every decade of television. You can't really do that in a 2 hour, 2.5 movie. They really took advantage of the format of the medium. And I really hope that, like you mentioned, Falcon and Winter Soldier is more cinematic. But I really hope any future shows, or if they end up doing a season 2, that's with, Wanda and Vision as the main characters. It'd be nice to see what else they can do. Because right out of the gate, they really hit it out of the park. And again, with that week-to-week sort of format, as we talked about, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of fan theories, and I can't think of a show, man, it's been a long time where I've seen so much discussion on social media and then so much outrage when the thing that they wanted to happen. I mean, I guess that kind of happens in a vacuum with Mandalorian recently. Is it going to be Luke? Is it going to be Ezra? Or, whatever. But this was week to week. There were I don't know how much you guys read into it, but I would follow the discussions, and it's oh, look at this. This commercial totally confirms that, Mephisto's the villain, or, who's that aerospace engineer that's friends with Monica? That has to be Reed Richards, it has to be Fantastic Four, setting up Fantastic Four.
The fly on the window was
right.
Mephisto,
yeah.
Okay.
And then obviously, I mean, the big one, and we'll talk more about it too later, but her brother Pietro, they're casting the guy who played Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men universe and bring him into the Marvel universe. And us knowing, okay, Marvel now owns Fox and owns X-Men. Does this mean this is going to be our entryway into introducing the X-Men into the MCU?
And then you had Paul Bettany in an interview talk about this huge cameo that was coming.
Yeah.
And it was just
someone
himself.
he always wanted to work with.
Right.
It's like, I've always wanted to work with this actor. It's been a dream of mine. And
what a great way to troll the fans. Like, that was great.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
I thought it was hilarious the way they brought the actor Pietro back and had him be the same. I mean, that was just so funny because you don't have too many of them, playing the two different characters playing this, two different actors playing the same guy in two different universes like that, and then having them cross over like that, and then having it just be, I was just kind of made up. I mean, he's dead. I'm not really the brother,
Yeah.
I love the way they did that.
Yeah, it ended up being like a potty joke.
And then they had him in the same basement that he was in the beginning of the X-Men movie, where he's just kind of like wasting his life away.
Exactly. Yeah, they teased it so much. I mean, obviously a lot of. I mean, I personally thought like they took it a little too far. Like, I didn't mind that he wasn't, the Quicksilver from the X-Men universe, even though I kind of hoping it was. But when thinking about it, like thinking about the bigger picture, I'm like, okay, if you're gonna introduce this guy and he is a mutant, like, then there's so much explanation that you'd have to bring into it, and they've just barely touched the surface of the multiverse. And I mean, this show kind of, by the end of it, is barely introducing it. And I think it would have taken away from the central message and theme of the show and from the main characters. Like, if all people would be talking about is like, oh my gosh, X-Men are now in the MCU, and if like Reed Richards or Magneto showed up, that's all people would be talking about. They wouldn't be talking about like how they dealt with, again, the grief, those themes, and the sort of evolution and progress of Wanda's character now becoming the Scarlet Witch, and this new vision that we get, through the show and by the end of the show. So
I think there was I can't remember if it was Kevin Feige, but somebody made the comment that basically, trust us. Like,
right.
Like, the things that you want will be addressed somehow. Just trust us. And I really appreciated that, because I think you're right that if they tried to pull in the mutant universe now, it would have turned WandaVision into the new X-Men TV show, like, and that wasn't what they were trying to do. And
Mutant Vision.
Right.
Yeah.
And at least for me, again, being the casual fan, and listeners, please don't hate me for this. I'd seen like Days of Future Past, and I'm pretty sure I saw one of the others, but I did not recognize him as the Quicksilver of the X-Men universe. I recognized that he wasn't the Pietro from Age of Ultron. And so at least and then of course they make it clear in context that this is Pietro, but it's not really Pietro. So like, being a casual fan, I was like, oh, and then Darcy like quickly points out, oh, they recast Pietro, which was again another awesome TV trope that happens because characters do have to get recast. And so like, for me, it didn't really bother me, and I wasn't expecting this huge X-Men connection, even though after talking to my buddy, it was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun if they did that. But I'm fine with where they took it. And I wonder if there's going to be more for that character, though. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in some way.
Me neither. Yeah.
I'm happy that I wasn't on social media with this stuff. I was just enjoying the episodes, because just like when I don't like reading a review of a movie or hearing what people are saying about it, I just want to go and enjoy it and not have my expectations tainted one way or the other, and just go in, and see what happens. And if I would have, had people bashing this or that decision that was really just their opinion of what they were hoping would happen, it would have probably ruined it for me to a certain extent. So I'm glad that I didn't get involved in that. I just enjoyed the episodes and each week.
Yeah, I'm glad there wasn't like a big, like another bigger villain than Agatha, like a Mephisto, or I'm glad that Magneto didn't come in. Because, in the comics, Magneto is Wanda's father, Wanda and Quicksilver's father. But in the MCU,
right,
obviously her origin is not that. I mean, maybe they'll explain that when they do introduce X-Men one day, that he is actually her father. But I'm glad that ultimately they didn't have any of those big cameos, because again, it would have taken away from the show. And I really like how they dealt with her character and Vision's character. And speaking of Agatha, she ends up being, you know, the I guess the main villain. And we have that big twist. I know, Father, you were more surprised than probably I was, because you know, I didn't know for sure she was who she was, but Agatha Harkness. But I mean, again, social media, everyone was saying, "Oh, she must be this person," and she had she was wearing that pendant, and her comic book character wears that pendant. So I'm like, "Oh, it's probably her." But still, even knowing that it was probably her, it was still a great sort of development and twist. And obviously, like we said, the song was great and the reveal was great. And Catherine Hahn, that's her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Wonderful actress. I love her and everything she's in. Just comedically, she's excellent. Yeah. So let's talk about that episode. I mean, that was a very pivotal episode. What did you guys, think of the twist and how the Agatha character in general was handled, throughout the season?
Well, bring me up to speed, or just remind me, because the kids got lost. And when exactly did I know that she went in to Agatha's house.
Yeah. This was the episode where I think it was called Breaking the Fourth Wall, where she was, depressed and eating cereal on the couch, and Agnes comes over earlier and takes the kids to her house, and so she's watching the kids, and then I forget what actually draws her over to Agnes's house later on. It must just be she's looking for Billy and Tommy, which at that point they have disappeared, but they're still in Agatha's house at some point. And then she goes down into the basement, and Agnes. Then
you have the big reveal.
Yep, comes through with the big reveal.
I can say that, not being with you, Father, of not being aware of the comics and what goes on there, I'm just, the MCU is really where I get all my information. So I wasn't aware of Agatha or her character or anything, and was totally shocked that this seemingly kind of, Alice Kravitz from Bewitched character that's kind of always in your face and bugging you or whatever, suddenly turned into this witch who had somehow weaseled her way into Wanda's whole universe that she had created here, this whole town. I loved it. It was great. What are they going to do next? They're kind of, as they're going along, okay, they're running out of decades. What are they going to do next? And then they got, that, and things once again kept getting more serious. What's wrong with the kids? Are they okay? Mm-hmm. And you still have the threat from the outside, and the main, protagonist or antagonist outside that's trying to get Vision. So it was really kind of like, as they say, put your main characters in a tree and throw rocks at them. There's things were getting bad for our main characters at this point.
Yeah. And I think that they handled it very, very well, because as I was watching it, you don't, like I mentioned before, I was labeling someone else as a villain just about every week. There was a point there where I even thought, well, is Geraldine even on the right side of things? How does she know about Ultron? And is, what's her story? And then you've got Hayward outside, and you've got, these weird things happening inside the Hex. And what I liked about Agatha was that she ends up more or less becoming kind of the main villain, but she wasn't, I'm glad that she wasn't the one that started everything. The Hex is Wanda's. That the Hex is there because of Wanda's grief. That Agatha, was drawn to it because of the power, but she's not the one that created it. And so Agatha is sort of wreaking havoc inside, but but more because she's trying to understand where Wanda's power is coming from so she can take it for herself. So the story still goes back to Wanda and the hex being Wanda's thing. But then that causes, well, is Wanda the vision or sorry, is Wanda the villain here? You know, right. and what's going on there. And then you get more sympathetic towards her because you recognize that this is her grief process, even though she did some really bad things, you know. But like, and Agatha, I'm really glad they didn't kill her. I think she is so cool of a character that I really hope she comes back in some way. So I thought that they handled her very well, and I was sort of expecting it because I have my friend who was kind of filling me in on it, but even so, you could have had that whole thing play out without Agatha even being revealed at all, and still have, you know, the Hayward be the villain and it all play out too. So, but I liked how they filmed all of Agatha's scenes. It like in the different time periods when they finished filming that particular episode. So they were able to put her in all of those places. So very, very good.
Yeah. And I like, she was a perfect character, I think, because I mean, she's a witch and we're dealing with the evolution of Wanda into Scarlet Witch and her being like the device for bringing in the whole witch mythology. I mean, seeing her history from the Salem witch trials and then the Darkhold book and all that stuff. Like I thought it was the perfect choice for her to be the whether you want to call her the main villain or a villain of the show. I thought it was handled really well and she served like a real purpose. And like you said, Father, I'm glad that it was still Wanda at the end of the day that was the cause of all this. Mm-hmm. And all the mystery and intrigue is really about her and Agatha wanting to learn about her, and where she got her powers from. And then when she finds out who she really is, you see the real fear in her eyes, which leaves some interesting possibilities going forward, with the MCU.
Yeah. Stupid me's like they're like, we didn't know that she was a Scarlet Witch the whole time because I thought we did. Okay. Well, I mean, like, yeah. I know we did, but I didn't know they didn't know. I mean,
wasn't that?
Yeah, because she was never called that in any of the movies.
There's my ignorance. I didn't know that, that wasn't a thing yet. I just thought they just usually called her Wanda, but
right.
And I love the way they put the costumes on her for Halloween. Vision was right in the original.
Yes.
Enjoyed that. That was good.
That was excellent. Yeah.
I know I didn't. My daughter's like, you didn't even know those were. I'm like, yeah, I know, but when you told me, I liked it.
That gives all those cosplayers out there that don't have money the easy way to dress up.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah, good point.
Speaking of the Scarlet Witch, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't that like a trademark thing where it was part of the mutant universe? And once Disney bought Fox, then they could bring that name into the MCU. Is that why they didn't call her the Scarlet Witch before now?
I know. That's a good point. I know that was the case for some characters. That might have been the case with hers. You might be right. I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, that maybe that's why they held off ever calling her Scarlet Witch.
Because I know that when she was called Scarlet Witch in WandaVision, like that was a big deal.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
So
yeah, you might be right. A lot of those like copyrights and naming rights, it's very confusing. Like for example, like the Hulk is owned by, like the movie rights of the Hulk is owned by Universal.
Yeah.
But Marvel can still use the Hulk as a character as long as he's not the main character of a movie and his name's not in the movie title. So that's why Marvel will never be able to make an Incredible Hulk movie unless they have Universal's permission or the copyright expires.
But on that particular issue, Tyler and my buddy was telling me that's why like the Hulk story is sort of split between, was it like Thor Ragnarok and Infinity War and Endgame. So like he's got his own arc going on in those movies, but he's just not like the main star.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's how the MCU's way. Yeah.
We need one of these fan film guys to just piece it all together.
Right.
You can just watch the Hulk story without all the other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Because basically Thor Ragnarok could have been called Planet Hulk. I mean, Planet Hulk is a famous comic storyline. where Hulk goes on is on another planet and fighting for in front of crowds. So Marvel just did their clever way of going around that. Before we go more in depth on Wanda and Vision, what do you guys think of some of the supporting characters? You have Jimmy Woo, you have Darcy, and you have on a higher level Monica, who we see a big evolution of with her character. Obviously, I mean, last time we saw her, she was a little girl in Captain Marvel, and now she is potentially. I mean, she has powers now. We can see that, and it's not really, again, not to get too comic book nerdy, but she could be a number of different characters. But Photon seems to be the character that she's going to end up being. What do you guys think of the supporting characters, and how they were dealt? Do you have any favorites? I mean, I know with Jimmy, like right off the bat, I just love the card trick thing that he did, because that's if you've watched Ant-Man, he asks Paul Rudd, he asks Ant-Man like, hey, can you teach me that magic trick, after he sees him do it at his house. So it was a cool little connection. But yeah, what do you guys think of those characters?
I thought it was great how they pulled them out of just all the different story. You got an Ant-Man side character, you have a Thor side character, a Captain Marvel side, and you bring them all together. We're all in the same universe, so obviously, and they all just have very legitimate roles. I mean, it wasn't like far-fetched that they were there, and they were fun. I mean, they were like your characters that were kind of, except for, and remind me of her name again from Captain Marvel, Monica.
Monica.
The other two were kind of comedy relief, funny characters. So putting them together. Darcy and Wu was kind of fun to see how they interacted. So it gave a lot of legitimacy, and it was just kind of fun. Like, oh yeah, I remember that person. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was fun too. I mean, Jimmy Woo, someone out there on the interweb said that they should do like an X-Files show with Jimmy Woo solving cases.
Oh, I would totally watch that.
I think we all would. Like he's just got that personality that you can't not like the guy. Like he is just fun, and then Darcy, and I never saw Thor, so I knew that she was a side character from Thor, so I kind of knew that, but I thought she was fun. She's incredibly smart, and yet she was also sort of our eyes into what was going on in the sword camp outside, and she's the one. I mean, I think there's a point there where she's like, I don't know if she's eating popcorn, but she's telling Jimmy or Hayward, like, I'm invested as she's watching the show. And I'm like, yes, that is me right there, and so she's kind of our eyes into that world. And I thought it was really fun that she got pulled into the Hex and got to play a small role in the kind of the finale of things. I think it was planned for more, but but I thought that she was fun. And Monica, I'm excited where her character goes. Again, I know nothing really about the backstory, but I thought she was pretty bad A, and I want to see more of Monica. And I assume in Captain Marvel 2 we'll probably get more of that.
And I like the way they used Darcy to discover the show. Like she discovered the broadcast, and she was able to tune into it and watch this whole thing. Yep. That was clever how they pulled that off.
Yeah, no, I think having Jimmy and Darcy were great choices, and Monica, like I loved, I think it was episode 4, where it starts out with her coming back from, inside the MCU, they call the blip, coming back. I mean, I like, you forget like how catastrophic that event was, and we're still feeling the effects of Infinity War and Endgame. Imagine being away for 5 years. One second you thought you were right beside your mom in the hospital, and then you hear 5 years have passed and your mom died. Like, that was heavy. I mean, and again, it was really cool, like seeing. I think the very first shot was seeing her come back to life, like the kind of the reverse effect from when everyone was blipped off the radar, and her coming back in. It was really powerful. watching that, and I'm sure we'll see more of that. I mean, we got a little of that too in Spider-Man: Far Away From Home, and I'm sure we'll see more of that going forward.
I appreciated though that this dealt with that a little more realistically. Spider-Man: Far From Home, they sort of have their high school TV production,
like,
just
like their newsletter sort of thing.
And so it felt appropriate for that movie, but it sort of just kind of passes by, and then you get into the story of Spider-Man, which was great. But this, you see some more of the real like drama of like, what would that have been like? And actually, I think we're seeing that in Falcon and Winter Soldier too. Is they're just like the results and the what this blip actually caused. It's not like you can just bring back half the population and then pick up as normal. Like, there's a lot more that goes on, and you're gonna have kids who come back and their parents have died, and Monica's in that situation. And so I appreciate the realness that they're trying to at least throw into that obviously fictional thing.
There was an interesting parallel. I might be pushing it, but in The Walking Dead, when Grimes wakes up and is like unaware of what's been happening since he's been kind of out of it, like, and there's walkers and there, the zombies and stuff, and all these changes, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. And she wakes up into a different kind of chaos. All these people have appeared, and like, where are these people coming? She's it's just so different, and she's trying to figure out this world where these people that weren't there are now back, and then some people like her mom are gone, and she's walking around a hospital with the same kind of chaotic kind of like, this is a very strange world that I just woke up into. How long have I been out of this? It was, I don't know, it seemed like they were shooting it in a similar way.
Cool. Yes. I just wish Jimmy, Darcy, and Monica had more of a bigger role in the finale. I think that's one of the few sort of criticisms I had, but finding out later that the finale kind of got affected by COVID. So, and you can kind of tell, like, they try to just shoehorn in those characters as much as they could. Like, Darcy just basically had that one scene where she ran over,
which was great.
Oh, that was awesome. Great. Yeah. very, very satisfying. Yeah. Monica, like, she saved, the kids. She stepped in front of the bullets. But I know I heard in interviews with the directors of the show that it was originally planned for a bigger fight sequence with her. But, again, I mean, COVID has affected a lot of productions, and the fact that we still got this show and the quality that it delivered on is still great, but just small gripes. But you gotta hand it to them that they kind of dealt with it probably as best as they could. So getting, at the end of this podcast, we'll get back to the main characters. So by the end of this series, we see this huge arc and evolution of Wanda's emotional state and her process of grief. I mean, she lost Vision, she lost, her children within this, Westview sort of town that she created. We go back to her childhood, we see how she lost her parents, and obviously we go back to Age of Ultron, where Pietro, her brother, dies. And her whole country of Sokovia, basically, she's lost. So, I mean, for one person to go through all that.
Yeah. And she lost Vision 3 times.
Exactly. Yeah. And she had to kill him one of those times.
Yeah.
And the second time at the end of the show. But getting into her character and the sort of, again, the grief that she goes through, what are your thoughts on how the show handled her journey and her character going forward?
So I think that this was really what made WandaVision shine. I mean, yes, it's fun. Yes, the sitcom realities are fun, and they're fun to watch. And, the mystery and the intrigue and the superhero, like, all of that is really fun and makes for good TV, and it makes for really cool storytelling. But I think that what makes the show shine in an authentic and real sense is this particular issue. How does Wanda deal with grief? And I as I was kind of thinking about and working through just my thoughts on this show, I think it works because this is something that is so fundamentally human that we all can relate to Wanda. Not that we've killed our our boyfriend 3 different times or watched him die. But Wanda is in essence a broken hero. She's got this complexity about her, this moral complexity. She's, she's grieving the loss of the love of her life. And we all, every single human person on this planet, we don't go through this life without experiencing loss. So there's that connection there that we can look at Wanda and we can say, I know what she's going through and I've experienced that loss. And then we see how Wanda tries to deal with it. And I love that, because that ends up being a mirror for us. Like, well, should I do what Wanda did in a metaphorical sense? Or we see how it plays out and how what Wanda tries to do to distract herself from the pain of the grief doesn't actually work. And so we do the same thing in different ways. So we don't create a hex in an alternate kind of fictional world, but we create fantasy worlds when we run to anything that distracts us from the pain, whether that's drugs, alcohol, anything. If we could just binge watch Netflix rather than dealing with the pain, that in itself is creating, this fantasy world that we naturally humanly want to do because we want to protect ourselves from the pain. And so I love that that's how they dealt with this, and that it wasn't done comically, but it was done realistically. And you see Wanda go through, those stages of grief, and it's real and relatable, and so just to kind of give listeners just an overview of that, the stages of grief tend to fall into these. It's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you can almost split the episodes up based on those different stages of grief, where the first 2 episodes are basically denial, where Wanda has created this idyllic fictional world. It's super funny and cheesy. And in itself, comedy also is a distraction from the pain, and so that kind of plays out. And she even, there's a point where one of the sword operatives comes from the sewer, and right. Wanda says no, and just rewrites the entire scene, and so you see that play out. Or anger, when Geraldine mentions her brother dying from Ultron, and Wanda, in anger, knocks Geraldine completely out of the hex, and then we see her bargaining when she's bargaining with Hayward when she leaves the hex, and she says, you don't bother me and I won't bother you. And so she's trying to bargain and keep her fake reality. And then depression is very clear in episode 7. She's got the unkempt hair, and she's in her pajamas eating cereal on the couch, and everything's going crazy around her, and she's just kind of, just depressed.
Which for us was basically the COVID last April.
Right.
Yeah. But you watch all of these things and you see how she tried to deal with it and why it doesn't work. And it just leads her down this road. And then finally it's episode 8 and 9 when she has to go through the reruns and has to accept things and acknowledge the pain, and ultimately that's what leads her to acceptance and finally taking down the hex and saying goodbye to Vision. But there's still that hope that they'll say hello again, which was also important, I think, for that. So I really thought that this was what made the show stellar.
Yeah, it gave it a real backbone.
Mm-hmm.
This is the solid thing that's always there. We have a little comedy here, and you needed comedy relief if you're going to deal with this kind of topic. And you think to yourself, okay, if I have the powers of Wanda, how would I deal with grief? What kind of pretend things would I create? So you can see yourself in her. You didn't kill your boyfriend 3 times or whatever, but you know what I mean? You can see how, I try to distract myself from watching TV. Well, what if I could just create my own TV show and I'm in it, and the people I miss are back? And so, you can imagine that. And there was a line that Father put on our notes, and I wrote down too when I was watching it, what is grief if not love persevering?
Mm-hmm.
And Vision was having a discussion with Wanda, correct?
Yep.
Over the loss of, was it over the loss of Pietro, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he says that. I'm just like, wow, what a line drop. That was great. And the thinking that, we were never made to be separated from our loved ones. This God didn't intend us to experience death of a loved one. So that is that grief of separation when we're supposed to all be in communion, and we don't have a sense of that communion when people pass on to the next life is grief. But what's missing in this show that we have as Catholic Christians is that we know that's a temporary separation, which should keep us from despair.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see, it's hard to imagine how, if you're in this atheistic worldview, like it seems they are in this universe, how do you get past depression and going into despair? Because, everything's meaningless and it just all ends and everyone's just gone. That, as opposed to what we know to be true, that we'll be together again.
I think they sort of imply that reality in the MCU. It's not God by any means, at least within the MCU, but they do have that line where, we've said, I forget exactly how it goes, but it's in that final scene, and Wanda and Vision are basically saying goodbye, and they said, but we've done this how many times now? It stands to reason that we'll say hello again.
Right.
And okay, in the superhero world, you almost can replace God with like either technology or magic or
the multiverse or
right. Yeah. So I think that they're echoing in on that because I think that's part of who we're made, how we're made by God. Whether you acknowledge God or not, we're made for that union with one another. We're made as relational beings. And so I think even within the MCU, they're recognizing that we need that hope that this death and separation isn't the end. And we know that's because we're called to eternal life, and and that ideally, our loved ones are in heaven and we will be with them one day, but in the MCU, it's more, we're magic.
We're characters will probably write another story for us.
Right. But I mean, but even that idea at least is still there, and I think it needs to be, because that's how we're made. And you can't even in an atheistic story, it's you can't not have relationships. That's inherent in every single human being.
The real unexplainable without God truth creeps in innately, and they explain it in different strange kind of ways. But because as I said, it'll turn to despair. I mean, if this is it,
that's why I love
if everyone just is gone.
When I talk to people who like aren't believers or agnostic, I mean, that's why it's super helpful to just go to natural law. And if you can connect on that level and point out those things like, do you believe in love, and do you believe in morality, and even like those sorts of things that are inherently good or evil, all tend to point back to God himself. And if you can kind of connect with someone on that level, it just leads you down that road, versus just going to a religious discussion right off the bat.
Yeah. And, there's several examples that, the MCU has given us of an afterlife. I mean, I think of Black Panther, where he goes to see his dad, and then you obviously in Infinity War and Endgame, you have the whole idea behind the Soul Stone.
Well, and isn't it's one of the X-Men, played by Ray Park. He's Catholic. It's
Nightcrawler.
Yeah. So I mean,
Nightcrawler's Catholic.
There are Catholic superheroes. So it's
absolutely.
I guess we shouldn't imply that there is no religiosity in the MCU at all. But
Captain America being definitely a God worshing character.
Yeah. There's only one God, and he's not it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, I again, going like whether or not you believe in God or not, if you've gone through what Wanda has gone through, I mean, Monica says it in the finale. She's like, I probably would have done the same thing if I could bring my mom back. You know, it's like, what would you like if you had these powers and you could sort of change your reality? Like, yeah, I mean, yeah, you would, if you would ask anyone, you know, without going through something like that. Like if you ask me now, like, oh, would I do that? I'm like, no, obviously it's morally wrong. I would not try to do something like that. But
when you're in the middle of it,
put me through all those trials.
Yeah,
it's the temptation is going to be pretty strong.
It's one thing to rationally know that, yeah, that's stupid. That, you know, that's not going to lead to anything good. It's another thing to be in an emotional state, and then, you know, reason tends to kind of go out the window. So we have to do our best to kind of balance the two.
Yeah, well, the danger of, you know, in the MCU, the Marvel Universe explores that with so many of its characters. You know, power with you know, given to somebody who has emotions and ups and downs. You know, the Incredible Hulk, all the different characters that they have, you know, are much more human and flawed than the ones we find in like DC. So, you know, Wanda's just another one as we explore, you know, how somebody with powers like her deals with grief.
I have to say, I'm a DC fan, so, you know, be careful over there.
No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just a different kind of way they look at the different way they look at the characters. And I grew up with DC. Marvel was later.
I'm a
Super Friends.
I'm a DC TV fan. I'll say that.
Yeah, I can't wait to do the Snyder Cut podcast. Well, yeah, so we're talking about Wanda and sort of her humanity dealing with grief. And now we have Vision, this Vision character who's not human and not even the Vision from Age of Ultron to Infinity War. This is, as we learn in the final episode, just a creation of Wanda's using, as we learn, you know, she has a portion of the Soul Stone in her, as we see in one of the flashbacks when she's exposed to it, and she used that and her memories of Vision to create this, you know, Westview version of Vision to start a life with, and then obviously we get the introduction of the White Vision, you know, that Hayward is able to create, and we learned that was his plan all along to recreate him to have the ultimate soldier, the ultimate weapon. Right. So that whole cliched sort of thing. But, and White Vision being a very interesting character from the comics. So it was really cool to see that. What do you guys think of his character? And I mean, I guess we can kind of, you know, by the end of it, you know, he gives all his memories to the White Vision, and he has that moment where he says, "I'm the Vision," and he just flies away. We don't see him again. But it's obviously we're going to see him again in another movie or TV show.
It's sort of left ambiguous. Like, he's got the memories, right, but is he as emotional as the Vision that we know? I think exactly. I suspect that's where they're going to go and explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely don't. We're never going to get the old Vision back, but whoever this new Vision is going to be an interesting character to sort of explore. And I liked in the finale, obviously the famous scene now, the ship of Theseus scene, where it just made sense that, you know, the Vision always being an intellectual character, and if you remember from like Age of Ultron, he was just born, he was like discovering himself, so he had a lot of like sort of these, you know, intellectual sort of like exploratory existential sort of scenes and moments where he's like, oh, you know, what is this feeling like when he felt love for the first time, or when he was thinking about like which side he should be on. Should he be on humanity's side or on Ultron's side? So it was cool seeing that ship of Theseus sort of conversation. They had their whole CGI battle for a little bit, but it ended up being that sort of heady intellectual thing where you know, one Vision telling the other Vision like, oh, well, let's think about it this way, like what are we if we're just pieces of this guy who was called Vision? Are we Vision, or are we something else? So it was really cool. I mean, it was really, to me, it was his character is just that much more interesting now. So I just wanted to see what your guys' thoughts are on the Vision character in general throughout the season.
I think that the way that they handled those fight scenes was really cool. You had on one hand the Agatha Wanda sky battle, which was also just really cool to watch, and of course Wanda's doing things that you wonder, why is she missing? And then you find out why she's missing. But the Wanda and Agatha battle is very magical, physical, lots of movement. And it just made sense that the Vision battle was the intellectual, I need elaboration and let's, talk this out,
Right.
So I really appreciate that. I think I enjoyed Vision, throughout the show. He's also a bit of our eyes into the hex, because he doesn't know what's going on either. And so that was helpful, because again, like at one point I was rooting for Vision to, escape and get away from Wanda, because I just assumed Wanda was controlling everything and had just gone off the deep end, but then like by the end of it, I'm rooting for them as a family. And I really loved, it was like if you've seen The Incredibles, there was the hero pose with The Incredibles on the island.
My daughter shouted that out. Incredibles.
And then you have the hero pose with all four of them, and it was just like, yes, I love that. So at the end, and that's a really good theme to point out too, is that they do focus on the family unit, which is great. My only other comment was at the end with White Vision leaving. I do hope that it's not the same Vision, because I think if it was, that would totally discredit this entire show, because this was Wanda dealing with grief, and it wouldn't make sense for Vision to just magically come back as the Vision that we knew. So I think for purposes of the storytelling, like, it has to be a different Vision. And, and this was Wanda's way of closure and moving on to the next part.
He could be like the emotionless Spock version of all logic. I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was, I guess, surprised. I was delightfully surprised, but how deep the Vision character was, because I was like, well, she just created him. It's just a figment of her imagination somehow. I don't know how much I appreciated how she did it with the Infinity Stone and everything. So just seeing how he was starting to notice things, whereas all the actual people who were real were much more flat, and the further away from Wanda they were, the more flat they were. Their roles were rather repetitive.
Right.
And, so seeing how deep Vision was with his, looking at Wanda and what are you dealing with? What's going on here? There's more, when he's at work, and how he like wakes people up and they're like, they're suffering, like they're in purgatory or something. And then he like puts them back, and
he even acknowledges, he's like, Wanda, you can't control me like you can control them. Like,
he's different. And he's in a way, he is the hex, and he's more real in this hex than anyone else is. And we see that when he tries to leave, and we presume it would have destroyed him if he would have somehow gotten out. He would have ceased to exist. I like the Vision character. I knew nothing about White Vision. So that was kind of a new thing to see how that was. And then the whole kind of almost angelic battle of intellects that they had, we're just going to battle our intellects and see who wins, and how they came together, how it was, I don't know, the real Vision, the real fake Vision, I don't know, brought them together. And I enjoyed that. And I really like also that, you're not getting any kind of like shoddy TV effects. These are, movie quality battle scenes. These are, whether it's because, the CGI or whatever, but, the flying scenes, the different things that they would do in the movies that were so cool, they were doing here. So, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I really think they handled his character very, very well, and I think I like that we're getting a version of Vision going forward. And yes, and I'm glad that they could have like the original Vision, be dead again. Like Father pointed out, he needs to be dead. So this show had a purpose. And Wanda's character, went through that for a reason. But I'm glad that we get to see. It's cool. I mean, Paul Bettany's a great actor, and I think he does a really good job with that character. Well, I'll end with is like, what do you think of the MCU going forward? I mean, we get these 2 stingers at the end. We get one with Monica where she, I think, is being recruited by
Nick Fury.
Yeah. It could be Talos, but I think it's Nick Fury.
We saw Nick Fury up there at the end of Far From Home, Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah.
So
on vacation.
Right. So yeah, I think it's Nick Fury.
Yeah, me too. I think that's, But either way, I mean, it's this sort of the same. They're all in the Captain Marvel sort of wheelhouse. So that was cool. But even more interesting, we see Wanda, out in a remote, house and God knows where. And she is
pretty sure that was my backyard in the Rocky Mountains. Just saying.
That's a pretty cool backyard. Just kind of doing that, that Doctor Strange thing where he can sort of bilocate and do two things at once.
Yeah, bringing multitasking to a whole new level. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we see her reading the Darkhold, and we hear the kids. We hear the kids calling out to her. And we see this sort of teaser of like, oh, is she reaching out into the multiverse? I mean, Doctor Strange 2 is called Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So it's right there in the title. So yeah, we might see the kids again. I mean, her kids are, very formidable characters in the comics. It could be teasing Young Avengers because they are ultimately members of the Young Avengers. But, with the movies, you never know which direction they're going to go. So what do you think of this whole just concept of the multiverse and what that means? I mean, do you think that's a cool direction that the MCU is going toward?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. So I did mention earlier, I do like the DC TV shows. So the Flash, Arrow,
yes,
those ones, they deal with the multiverse at least very quickly in the Flash. And so I've just loved that sort of concept, theoretical physics. And, if there were multiple Earths and different versions of me, like, I like that idea and how that can play into storytelling. So I'm very excited for Doctor Strange 2. I'm also very excited. I'm pretty sure we'll see Billy and Tommy again. And I, again, I'm basing a lot of this based on what my friend has told me, but it seems to me that they're setting up a Young Avengers. So I don't know the comics again at all, but I do know that Ant-Man's daughter,
right,
is
I'm blanking on her name too.
Is one of them.
They're also doing a Miss Marvel TV show. And she's been a member of the Young Avengers, so yeah.
So they're already at least they're placing some of these kids and Billy and Tommy. So I think eventually they're heading towards probably a Young Avengers movie, and I really like. Again, I'm excited for the multiverse. I really enjoyed Billy and Tommy. We didn't really talk about them yet a whole lot, but I really enjoyed them. And I had no clue that they were supposed to get superpowers. So in that episode, the Halloween episode, I was like, oh my gosh, like he's like Quicksilver. And then when Billy was getting all the telepathic things, and I watched it with my buddy Tyler, and I was like just waiting for him to see it, and he wasn't as surprised as me.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, duh, because he already knows that this is probably what was going to happen. But I did really like those characters. So since we heard them in Wanda's kind of trance, I'm excited that we'll see them again. It was also pointed out to me that that scene also shows Wanda's power, because Doctor Strange, when he does the same thing, he can't multitask. He's like, when he's separated from his body doing something, his main body is just dormant.
It's idle.
Whereas Wanda is like making tea while her other half is reading the Darkhold. So it was pointed out that just shows how much more powerful Wanda is than even Doctor Strange. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, Agatha said it herself. That she had a line where she says, the Scarlet Witch is even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
Who is Doctor Strange, at this moment.
I like the multiverse. I'm hoping they bring it into Star Wars so we can rethink some of the things that they've tried to do.
They should just
maybe it leaks into there.
Split back into the Legends universe. That's what I want.
Yeah, really, exactly. I mean, gosh, I'm listening to some of the Timothy Zahn, I think.
Oh, he's so good.
So
oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I love listening to the audiobooks because Mark Thompson reads them so unbelievably well. I mean, his voices are amazing. But anyway, I digress. Just a few quick things from my MCU expert daughter. In the Halloween episode of WandaVision, you can see in the theater in the background is playing The Incredibles.
Oh,
so you have that little shout out.
Very cool.
Along with their pose.
Yes.
Along with their pose. And also her final Scarlet Witch costume, which was like her Halloween costume, upsized to the really expensive version that the people would have to buy, was really appropriate and covered her up, while still looking just like the comics.
She requested more modest of a design, so I do want to give her total kudos for that. You don't have to be revealing for it to be an awesome.
And that's there's a message. There's a battle in the culture between do women have to make themselves objects or can they be presented? And it's kind of funny that there's actually a fight about it. It seems almost crazy, but it's good to see that there's people like Olsen who have clout and they're very desirable actresses to have in films that have that kind of dignity about themselves. So that she switched from how she looked even in the movies until to what she had in the final episode. How she looked was good. It was really good.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, and especially Father, I'm totally game for this multiverse stuff. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and yeah, it makes it more like if you're a comic book fan, it's totally a comic book thing.
Mm-hmm.
The multiverse is just it's like breathing air when it comes to comic books, and if you're a fan of sci-fi, again, it's totally something. It's a trope that is used time and time again. And that's because, when done right, it works, and it invites all this sort of cool things you can do, not only as far as fan service, but story wise. There's a lot of interesting things that you can sort of take advantage of, and if WandaVision is a representation of where these stories can go, it's a really good sign.
I heard things about them bringing back the different Spider-Mans.
That's a heavy rumor. They're denying it,
and having a multiverse with those three guys.
I'm totally game. It's still just rumors at this point, but yeah,
and make them all teenagers. I don't know how they pull that off, but
yeah. I mean, the Spider-Verse animated movie. I mean, they kind of dealt with that, and I freaking love that movie. It's and to have a live action version of that with
the original actors
and Andrew Garfield.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we already know that Electro, Jamie Foxx is playing Electro, and Afro Molina is playing Doc Ock. They're confirmed, so we know.
Wow.
We know those villains are coming back from two different Spider-Man universes.
But if you listen to
at least some versions of them,
if you listen to Tom Holland, he's denied, quote unquote.
You can never trust anything he says. We know his reputation.
My daughter just showed me a whole thing they did with him and the new what's her name? Zendaya.
Yep.
Zendaya.
When they announced the
whole thing based on it. When they announced the name of it and how they were feeding him false information and stuff because they know we can't keep a secret.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I would. Gosh. Yeah. If they show up, it's talk about fan service.
Well,
that's going to be great.
We don't have a whole long time to wait. That's coming this Christmas.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, it's about time something comes soon. I mean, with all this delays from the pandemic, they keep on pushing back the release of different things and stuff. Black Widow's been delayed again. for the umpteenth time.
Mm-hmm.
I know, but I think this one's final because they finally gave in and said they'll release it digitally at the same time.
Yep.
So,
Cool.
Looking forward to Black Widow. Well, that's all I got. Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap this up?
The only other thing that I would point out is that I think that they did an incredible job with the music, especially with they even with the modeled they modeled different theme songs for the different decades, and there is a set of like 4 notes that play through every decade in different forms. Right. And so like just the ingenuity that went into that is mind blowing. I can't even imagine it. It's just not just one theme song that you play for 9 episodes. It was like they had to create something new for each decade. And so just, I mean, and even if you Google it, there's someone who had pointed out Agatha's theme song, how that was hidden within all the other theme songs.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So get real music geeky going on. It just, and I'm a music fan. I was in band in high school and choir. And so I of course have all the soundtracks. And so I really appreciated the music.
Who are some of your favorite composers?
I mean, I would have to say John Williams, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Like I can't not say that. He's always been a fan of Hans Zimmer as well.
Hans Zimmer has great percussion in his themes, like Backdraft and stuff.
Yep.
And the late great James Horner.
Yep.
Always did some great stuff. He did Braveheart, I think.
He also did The Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh yeah,
he did.
So yeah.
So he was great.
So I'm a huge
Michael Giacchino is really good too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know we did a podcast on John Williams alone, which I'm very mad I didn't get in on that.
I didn't get in on it either
since I was little. But maybe just a whole soundtrack podcast on some of our favorites would be pretty cool.
Since we're talking about this, I have to throw this out there. There is a phenomenal podcast out there called The Soundtrack Show by Michael W. Collins, who actually does some voice acting for Star Wars, but he will take apart, like he does Star Wars. He'll pull apart some of the songs and talk about why they're fitting. And he does that with tons of different movies, even video games. He's really, really smart. So
that's cool.
So if you're interested in soundtracks at all, check out The Soundtrack Show by Michael W. Collins. It's great.
Okay.
That's really cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's all I got.
Speaking of, speaking of podcasts, hopefully you keep supporting this one. And we'd like to take a moment to thank those supporters who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Movies and TV shows, including our patrons, Timothy M., Father Anthony G., Dustin W., Krista M., and Laura F. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. Now is a great time to become a StarQuest patron. Thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter, when you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com/give, the first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor to support all our shows, including this one, making your gift go even further. And we're more than halfway to our goal of $2,000 in new monthly pledges. Won't you help us close the gap? If you've been thinking of becoming a StarQuest patron, now is the time. Visit sqpn.com/give today. And that's it from us. What did you think of WandaVision? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page. Or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Until next time, Mike Denz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of WandaVision.
Thank you.
Father Andrew Kinstetter, thank you as well.
Absolutely. This was a blast.
Yes, it was. And once again, I'm Andrew Hermiz. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV shows on StarQuest.